Back in 1971, two economists, Peter Diamond and James Mirrlees, took on a question that literally every government on Earth has to deal with. And in the process, they basically founded the modern theory of optimal taxation. The question itself sounds simple, but the answer they came up with, it's incredibly powerful.
So how do you fund a government without completely wrecking the economy? It's this puzzle that seems straightforward, right? But as we're about to see, the search for an answer brings up this fundamental tension that's right at the heart of all public policy. Okay, to really get what they're saying, you've got to picture two different worlds. First, there's this ideal first best world. In it, the government can use these perfect, flawless taxes that don't mess anything up. But you and I, we live here, in the real second best world, where every single tax we create causes side effects and forces us to make some really tough choices. So this perfect tax they imagined, it's called a lump sum tax. Just think of it like a fixed fee, say $1,000 that you have to pay no matter what. Because you can't work less or buy less to avoid it, it's perfectly efficient. It doesn't change your decision-making at all. But yeah, that perfect tax, in the real world, it's a complete fantasy. I mean, for starters, how would a government even know the right amount to charge every single person? And maybe more importantly, can you just imagine the political firestorm from charging everyone the same fee, rich or poor? It's a total non-starter. So we're stuck with the taxes we're all familiar with. We tax things we can actually see and count, like the income you earn, the stuff you buy, or the profits a company makes. And here's the kicker. All of these taxes are based on things we can observe, on transactions. And that, right there, is where all the problems start. You see, because these taxes are tied to what we do, they actually make us change our behavior. A high income tax might make you think twice about working overtime. A high gas tax definitely makes you drive a bit less. This change in behavior to avoid the tax, it creates economic waste, and economists have a name for that: dead weight loss. And minimizing this waste is the big challenge that Diamond and Mirrlees decided to tackle. All right, so if we're stuck in this second best world, what do? Well, they gave us two really powerful principles for doing the least amount of harm. And their first major breakthrough is all about production. It led to something we now call the production efficiency theorem. And the thinking behind this is, well, it's pretty profound. What they argued is that, look, even if a government has to use taxes to mess with the prices consumers pay, it should never, ever let the tax system interfere with the efficiency of the economy's production engine. Let me give you a super simple way to think about this. Let's talk about a baker. Their theory says you should never tax the flour the baker has to buy to make bread. Why? Because taxing those intermediate goods just gums up the works and makes the whole production process less efficient. Instead, you wait. You only apply the tax on the final product, the loaf of bread sold to the customer. So what's the big takeaway from this first principle? It's simple, really. If you want to make the total economic pie as big as humanly possible, the entire supply chain, from raw materials to factory parts, should act as if there are no taxes at all. You have to keep production efficient. Okay, so if we're not supposed to tax the inputs that go into making things, then all the weight of raising money has to fall on the final goods and services that we, the consumers, buy. And that brings us to their second brilliant principle. How do you design those consumption taxes to be as smart as possible? And, they weren't starting from zero here. They actually built on an older idea called the Ramsey rule. Now, the Ramsey rule is laser-focused on just one thing: designing a tax system that creates the absolute smallest amount of dead weight loss. It's all about pure, unadulterated efficiency. So to get this rule, you first have to get a handle on this thing called elasticity. Demand for some products, like essential medicine, is what we call inelastic. People need it, so a change in price doesn't really change how much they buy. But demand for other things, like fancy caviar, is super elastic. If the price jumps up, people just stop buying it. So the Ramsey rule in a nutshell is this: if all you care about is efficiency, you should slap high taxes on things with inelastic demand. Since people are going to buy it anyway, you raise money without causing much economic waste. On the flip side, you should barely tax those elastic goods, because a high tax could just completely wipe out the market for them. Okay, but, and this is a huge but, this is where Diamond and Mirrlees completely changed the conversation. They argued that governments don't just care about efficiency. They also care, and care a lot, about fairness, what economists call equity. And a tax that's perfectly efficient might also be incredibly unfair. And right here, you can see the conflict just crystal clear.
Pure efficiency tells us to put a heavy tax on medicine because its demand is inelastic. But our gut feeling, our sense of fairness, just screams no. That would hurt the poor and the sick the most. Fairness tells us to tax the caviar, the luxury item that wealthy people buy.
So, what was their solution? What did Diamond and Mirrlees actually propose? They showed that the optimal tax system isn't about picking one goal over the other. It's about finding this precise mathematical sweet spot that trades off a little bit of efficiency to get a big gain in fairness. And in their own words, the best tax is set right at that point where the social benefit you get from making things fairer is just balanced out by the economic cost of the waste that tax creates. It's just a beautiful and powerful idea of a system in perfect equilibrium. So in the end, what Diamond and Mirrlees gave us is this incredible new lens for looking at public policy. The next time you hear people debating a tax, whether it's on soda or carbon or investments, you now have the tools to ask the right questions. Is this tax really about efficiency? Is it about fairness? And most importantly, what's the trade-off being made?